question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Immigration and Citizenship, Senator Ayres. Minister, last financial year, your Labor government issued more than 350,000 new permanent resident visas and citizenships. This is the equivalent of adding nearly 1.5 times the entire population of Hobart in just 1 year. Minister, how many new permanent visas and citizenships are you permanently adding to Australia's population this financial year, which ends in just 8 days?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Ayres.
I'd be delighted to answer the question, Senator Hanson, but I am not indeed the responsible minister, and no doubt Minister Watt's going to enjoy taking your question when he's ready to go.
Well, just a minute. Minister Watt, just resume your seat, please. Senator Hanson, I understand Minister Ayres is not the responsible minister, but I'll give you the opportunity. Would you want to redirect that question to Minister Watt?
Love to. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Immigration and Citizenship, Senator Watt.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. One inconvenient fact for the One Nation Party is that this government has nearly halved net overseas migration since it spiked after the COVID epidemic. Most people in this country recognise that during the COVID epidemic, essentially migration ended into Australia. People couldn't come here. Most people recognise that after the epidemic, migration skyrocketed because people were trying to get back into the country, including many Australians who were seeking to come back into a country. And also, of course, we inherited on coming to office a completely broken migration system that was left behind by Mr Peter Dutton. Remember him? Remember Mr Peter Dutton? I know, or have you sort of erased any memory of him? So, broken migration system combined with a massive increase in migration post-COVID. Ever since then, we have been working hard to fix the rorts and the other faults in the migration system, including around international student numbers. And what that has meant is that we have reduced net overseas migration by 45% since it spiked, so nearly halved, and we're on track to reduce it even further. Now, we recognise, as a government and as a party, that the migration numbers that we were seeing post-COVID were unsustainable, they were too high, and they needed to be brought down. What we also recognised that to house Australians, which is what the One Nation Party often links with migration, we also needed to build more homes. And that's why, as a government, we have invested tens of billions of dollars in building more social and affordable homes for the battlers that Senator Hanson pretends she cares about. And how did One Nation vote every time we tried to increase funding for housing? They voted no, along with the Liberal Party and the National Party. So don't come in here and lecture us about supporting houses for Australians because you always vote against them.
Has expired. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Minister, Australia has been suffering under mass migration. Minister, your government says you are cutting immigration, yet you've flooded the country with over 2 million arrivals since coming to government. The damage has been done. Your 45% cut is too little too late. Why are you using mass migration to paper over your abysmal economic management, disregarding the call from millions of Australians to stop it due to their standard of living being destroyed? Why are you waiting till 2027-28 to reduce it up to 225,000? That is still too many.
Hanson. The time has expired. Minister Watt.
Thanks again, Senator Hanson. As I say, this government has worked extremely hard over the last 2 or 3 years in particular to significantly reduce migration levels to much more sustainable levels. At the same time, we, unlike One Nation, unlike the Liberal Party, unlike the National Party, have also supported increased investment in housing for the battlers that you pretend to care about. They're the battlers who need homes, and they're the battlers who you voted against getting new homes funded by the government. So we make no apologies for the fact that we had to reduce migration numbers. They were unsustainably high post the COVID epidemic and post the rorts in the system that were left behind by the former coalition government. And the changes that we have made are bringing migration back to a much more sustainable level than it has been at. Now, the question for people like Senator Hanson is how they intend to obtain the hospital workers, the aged care workers and the workers in various other industries that come from migrant backgrounds.
Expired. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Minister, analysis of migration data shows that just 20% of your 301,000 net overseas migrants in 2025 were skilled. That's before dealing with the fact that your skilled list includes occupations such as dog handler, hairdresser, gardener, golfer and migration agent. Minister, why is your government flooding Australia with 80% of unskilled migration?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Watt.
Well, some things don't change, do they? Senator Hanson, I know that it has always been your political agenda to try to divide Australians, to divide Indigenous Australians from other Australians, to divide other Australians from migrant Australians. This government will not engage in that kind of extreme division and chaotic arguments that the One Nation Party has been putting forward for the best part of 30 years. We saw from the National Press Club last week that One Nation's recipe for Australia is more division, more chaos and more cuts, and that is not something that this Labor government will stand for. This government is about bringing Australians together, not about dividing them from each other. And we'll leave it to Senator Hanson, along with her friends in the Liberal Party and the National Party, because they are all the same, to continue that kind of division, with a couple of rare exceptions, to continue with that division that is not the Australian way.
Has expired.
Hold on to your hats, because question time in the Australian Senate just erupted into a massive showdown over the country's national identity, housing markets and border policy. Senator Pauline Hanson marched into the chamber, dropping absolute truth bombs, or at least her version of them, aimed squarely at the Albanese government's immigration strategy. She pointed out that over 350,000 permanent resident visas and citizenships were stamped in just 1 year. Think about that for a second. That is like packing up the entire population of Hobart, multiplying it by 1.5 and dropping them into our suburban housing market overnight. She demanded exact answers on this year's total, setting off a classic game of political hot potato. When the question was redirected to Senator Murray Watt, representing the Immigration Minister, the government went straight into damage control mode. Senator Watt hit back with dynamic energy, insisting that net overseas migration has actually been slashed by 45% since its massive post-pandemic peak. He argued that the surge was an unavoidable spike after borders were locked tight during COVID, leaving a broken system inherited from the previous coalition government. To fix it, the government tightened rules on international student visas while pouring serious capital into social and affordable housing. Watt even threw shade right back, pointing out that One Nation routinely votes against housing funding bills. Naturally, Pauline Hanson was not buying the spin for a single second. She fired off a sharp follow-up, calling 2 million arrivals under Labor too little, too late, and slamming their future migration caps. She even pulled out official data claiming only 20% of last year's net migrants were actually skilled workers. The rest? Well, according to Hanson, the official skilled occupations list includes dog handlers, professional golfers and hairdressers. She argued the system is papering over economic management issues while leaving everyday Aussies struggling with rent. Senator Watt pivoted swiftly from cold numbers to pure values. Instead of arguing over golf professionals, he framed One Nation's rhetoric as fundamentally divisive and chaotic. He flipped the script by asking how Australia expects to run aged care facilities, hospitals or build new homes without vital skilled migrants. Labor's core defence is simple. Migration is not just a tap you turn off. It is about building a functional economy while bringing people together rather than driving wedges between communities. At the end of the day, this clash reveals two totally different visions for Australia. One focused on strict borders to save infrastructure, and another balancing economic growth with social equity. Thank you so much for watching.